let's first start to talk about the LinkedIn learning, because you're helping so many people learn and master new skills by working on a product that helps them. So, what's challenging about working on something that is so much career based, and it's so ever changing, right? This concept of ed tech, this whole vertical is so dynamic. So, what's the challenging part about working in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because I think depending on, so I work on an enterprise education space, right? So if you talk about, I think K through 12, the challenge might be slightly different, but most of them are applicable, I think, to both space. So in the adult learning space, I think first, the job to be done, like you said, is way more complex than a more commodity product. Like, for example, Uber or Insta, you can endless optimize every friction in that flow and map out the customer journey and just like keep optimizing in every circumstances. Pick you up on the airport. How do we select where you want to pick up? Like, no cash free transaction and all of that stuff, right? But for learning or career development, first you have to motivate people to learn. Learning is actually hard, right? For a lot of people, it can be boring. It requires dedication. It requires a lot of motivation. So that's really hard to do. And then learning is just part of it. It does not translate directly to like, oh, you're going to get a job, or you're going to get a good grade, or you're going to get promoted. So it could be a long journey. And so from the action to the outcome, just like you go to workout, right? Like it's almost like a lifetime pursuit, whether you like it or not, right? Like you can't say
It's very internally driven as well.
Yeah, you're going to build that six pack overnight. That's not going to happen, right? So a job to be done is way more complex than if you just take a ride and feel delightful right away, right? So I think that is both challenging and exciting, because there's a lot of user psychology you could use, gamification potentially, and yeah, just that's an interesting space, but also super challenging. That's one. I think the second space is that there's a lot of players in the space, meaning not so much of the competition, that too, but more like the number of users that you're serving, right? The stakeholders that you need to deal with. So in the enterprise space, you have people who are the employees who are taking the learning lesson. You have the manager who might be curious to learn about their team's overall, learning and development. You have the buyers who's actually paying to buy the software or the license. So you have like three different people, all probably have different, views or goals for themselves. So there could be conflicts there. And who do you listen to? How do you balance? And then, similarly, if it's in a school environment for K through 12, you can think of school administrator might have certain requirement that comes from, the government. And then you have parents, teacher, the children themselves, maybe use software. So there's a lot of things that you need to make trade-off decisions and prioritization, and then without overcomplicating the product. Last but not least, I would say, as much as we like to build a product, content is part of the product experience as well. Just like when you watch Netflix, no matter how good Netflix recommend you stuff, if the show itself is not great, then you probably won't find a lot of enjoyment from using the product, right? So I think what's unique about being an ad tech is how it's not like content is part of the product experience. And then so you need to think through what kind of content we want to deliver, especially in the past few years. I think there has been a lot of change in the content space, right? From more deep learning to like more hands-on, doing a lot of like practice coding in a sandbox environment, for example. Or if you want to learn data analytics, you need to actually open Excel or Tableau and actually learn how to practice with groups. And then also a lot of things have gone into TikTok style, right? Bite-sized learning, introducing entertainment part of learning. So a lot of that, a lot of changes. And how do you maintain your brand, right? Like, do you focus on one type or do you diversify? Where do you go? Where do you draw the balance? Which one do you go after first that will have the biggest leverage? So there's a lot of interesting and challenging questions that one can ask in this space.